Squad, we're back here, and in this video, we're gonna talk about bone tissue. Hold your cards, hold your cards. I know it's gonna be exciting. We're gonna have a good time here. So, bone tissue, bone organ can be compact bone tissue, spongy tissue, hyaline cartilage, dense connective tissue, or it could be vascular tissue. So that's red bone marrow or yellow bone marrow, and that's vascular tissue. Another name for that is the blood. So that's part of the what can compose or and comprise, excuse me, of bone organs. So it could be compact bone, spongy bone, hyaline cartilage, dense connective tissue, or vascular tissue there, aka blood, aka red bone marrow, yellow bone marrow. So bone tissue, as we know, tissue is comprised of cells and matrix. So matrix is the acellular stuff, if you will, between cells. In this case, the matrix of bone tissue is nutrients and fibers, as well as other things here. So instead of being the acellular stuff between cells, specifically with bone tissue, the matrix is the fibers, and it's the minerals there, as well as other things. So there are cells of specific cells in bone tissue as well. They're called osteoprogenitor cells, osteoblasts, osteocytes, and osteoclasts. So I know it sounds like I'm speaking a different language, but we're gonna walk through each of these different types of cells right now. So osteoprogenitor cells, aka osteogenic cells, they're stem cells. They are able to differentiate into multiple different types of cells. So if there's a vascular source available, if blood's available, if oxygen's available, nutrients, these osteoprogenitor cells are going to differentiate into osteoblast, so low produced bone. If there's avascular, if there's no blood, no nutrients flying around, these stem cells, these osteoprogenitor cells are going to differentiate into chondrocytes. Or chondroblasts, which is immature cartilage. So if there's vascular, osteoprogenitor cells differentiate into osteoblasts. If it's avascular, if there's no blood, these osteoprogenitor cells, aka osteogenic cells, differentiate into chondroblasts, which is immature cartilage. So we're going to have actually I'll get into the analogy once we get all the way through here. So osteoblasts, what the function of osteoblast are, they produce bone matrix. So bone matrix, aka osteoid. So what happens is the calcium, we've discussed calcium already a little bit in the bone and in the blood, but the calcium accumulates in the matrix and then it hardens. And then what happens from there is once the calcium hardens, nutrients can't pass through the hard area of the bone. So obviously nutrients can't get in. So what happens is these cells produce cytoplasmic extensions to a vascular source. So these things called canaliculi, they so here's, let's say, the bone cell. These canaliculi extend little branches off. They kind of carve out little spaces to a vascular source to allow blood to flow in, and obviously which carries oxygen and nutrients. So this is how bone cells and bone tissue keep supplying themselves with nutrients and oxygen is due to these canaliculi. But the calcium accumulates in matrix, then it hardens, and then once it hardens, nothing can enter, no nutrients can enter. So that's when the canaliculi come into play, the cytoplasmic extensions to a vascular source. Then osteocytes, they're a little bit mature. They're what the bone cells called whenever the canaliculi are formed and the matrix hardens. So the cool thing about the osteoprogenitor cells, osteoblasts, and osteocytes, they're actually all the same exact type of cell, just in different stages of development. So the progenitor cells, obviously the most immature. They can differentiate into the osteoblast or chondroblast. They are the most immature cell, which means they're the most highly mitotic. So most immature, highly mitotic. You could think of them analogy-wise as a baby. They're the baby. The osteoprogenitor is a baby, and then the osteoblasts, still the same type of cell, just in a more mature stage of development. You can consider The osteoblast is the teenager. So the osteoprogenitor cell grows up into the teenager, the osteoblast, and then the osteocyte would be comparable to a grown up. So once this canalicule has formed, once the matrix hardens, okay, the grown up is done growing, if you will, and this is the final stage of the cell. So osteoprogenitor cells, osteoblasts, and osteocytes, all the same exact type of cell, just in different stages of development. Pretty, excuse me, damn cool stuff, I'll tell you that. And then osteoclasts, they're derived from monocytes. We're gonna get into osteoblasts and osteoclasts in depth here very, very soon. But osteoclasts, just defining it now, are derived from monocytes, which are specific types of bone or specific cells of bone marrow. They are highly phagocytic, excuse me, so they eat damaged tissue, they eat things, they eat viruses, they eat pathogens, so they're highly phagocytic, excuse me, white blood cells. That's what monocytes are. But so multiple monocytes fuse together to form this osteoclast. So osteoclast thus is highly phagocytic, and what it does is osteoclasts eat old bone matrix. So osteoblasts produce bone matrix, osteoclasts eat old bone matrix there. So they could be considered bone destroyers, where the osteoblasts are bone builders. So osteoblasts build, osteoclasts destroy. They're kind of opposites there. So there's the four cells of the bone tissue are osteoprogenitor cells, osteoblasts, osteocytes, which are all the same type of cell, just different stage of development. And then there's the osteoclast, which breaks bone down or eats old bone matrix there. So we're going to continue our discussion here in 5, 4, 3. See you guys.